Warning: this conversation might trigger prolonged eye contact, radical honesty, spontaneous self-reflection, and the sudden realization that your communication style is just unhealed trauma in a trench coat. Side effects could include deleting dating apps, responsibly apologizing to an ex, or questioning if that situationship was ever real. Powered by Vulnerability, the brew that calms your nervous system while you unpack childhood wounds. Flavors include secure attachment chai, anxious Earl Grey, and avoidant vanilla. Because talking shame, ego, porn, trauma, and AI girlfriends demands more than small talk. Today we enter sacred territory. Intimacy as presence, not performance. Connection, not conquest. Our guest is Rebecca Torosian of Saving Intimacy, an intimacy behavioral specialist who works hands-on with the body through structured touch, nervous system regulation, and radical self-acceptance. She bridges talk therapy and embodied work, including surrogate partner therapy, to help people shift from anxiety and shame into confident, present connection. We dive into trauma stored in the body, how dissociation kills intimacy, vulnerability as ego death and soul rebirth, male performance anxiety, female subtle shame, modern dating fears, the loneliness epidemic fueled by porn and AI companions. We unpack sex as sacred life force, not just urge, but a path to trust, safety, and healing. Green flags, shameless kinks, forgiveness as reconnection. And the big one: if AI can fake affection, what happens to real human intimacy? Spoiler: tech mimics attention, but never attunement. The nervous system dance of two embodied souls choosing presence over protection. This isn't about techniques, it's about truth, healing intimacy through acceptance of your body, past, patterns, and power. Grab a notebook, silence notifications, maybe text that person you've been avoiding after this, because this might change how you touch, speak, and love. Welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome back to Brothers of the Arcana. As always, I am your host, Alex Aldea.
I am your co-host, Dave Ferrigno.
Very good. And with us today, we have Rebecca Torosian. And Rebecca is a personal friend of mine and a lady that I've known for many years, and she does some absolutely amazing things. I think she practices a calling, if you will. I think that's probably a fair thing to say. She'd probably agree with that to some extent.
Yes.
And it's something that she does that helps a lot of men out there who are struggling with issues of various kinds. And she's actually an intimacy behavioral therapist, right?
Right.
Would you characterize it as such?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. So yeah, she helps men with intimacy issues, which is a very interesting, I would say, a cutting edge opportunity for men to sort of learn more about themselves, learn how intimacy happens between men and women or whatever partners, and how to go about that probably in the best way possible. So let me ask you right off the bat, Rebecca, if you don't mind, in plain English, what is a intimacy behavioral therapist, and what do they do that basically regular therapy folks don't?
Okay. No, that's the question.
That's the question.
Yeah. So what I really do is help people access, right, the tools from within their own bodies to be able to replace, anxiety and stress that creates so many of these problems with ease and comfort. And that comes from practicing with them, how to move into their bodies with ease, with breath, and then also focus on sensation when giving and receiving touch through guided touch exercises. So that's, in a nutshell, what intimacy behavioral therapy is. And the simplest reason, I guess, to give, and most obvious as to how it's different, is that there's touch involved. And in regular or traditional therapy or therapeutic environments, that is not allowed.
So you use the word therapist, right? But you're not, strictly speaking, in the way of being licensed as a therapist.
In the traditional world, that's correct. I work outside of it. Yes.
So you're more in the life coach arena, so to speak? And or
Not really.
guru?
Yeah, I am a therapist, and the reason is because of the intent of the people that I work with really want to heal, and they want tools. And so the therapy process that we're engaged in is a healing process. So, that defines therapy. I mean, that defines a therapeutic, raison d'etre, if you will, right? Is to, help people really return to themselves, if you will, and find, within them the ability to transform, these challenges.
So there's an interesting question. I mean, there's the elephant in the room, so to speak, is so there's
Go ahead.
right. So I mean, well, I think because it'll be on people's minds is kind of like where is the cutoff line here between, let's say, therapy, surrogacy, escort, other things of that kind, quote unquote, whatever you want to style it as.
Yeah. That's always the question I get asked. And I'll start with the last part. So how is it different from like escort, prostitution, etc.? Again, comes down to intent or why someone is seeking. So you can say very simply, someone looking for an escort or prostitute is someone who's seeking a pleasurable experience, you would imagine, right? So they're seeking an experience, whereas someone who is coming into therapy is actually seeking to get healthier and wholer and more, harmonic in their body. So that's the difference. It comes down to, what someone is seeking. Then surrogacy, my original training was in a clinic here in New York called the Center for Sexual Recovery. And I was trained and worked as a surrogate partner therapist. So that was the underpinning of my training in this arena before I embarked on my own.
So talk us through what is a surrogate partner therapist in that?
Right. So a surrogate partner is a person who is trained by a psychotherapist who has studied this area, is actually born out of Masters and Johnson's. I don't know if you're aware of the history of this at all. There was a Showtime special a number of years back, or a Showtime called Masters of Sex. I don't know if you guys saw that or heard of that. But they, of course, Hollywood, they glamorized it. But the reality is that this work stems out of these folks back from like the 50s and 60s. And they started clinics, and there's a whole history there. I won't go into all of that. Like many wonderful things, it kind of came out of came out of like an accident, if you will. They weren't really trying to help people in this way, but they discovered in their work that there were people who had problems functioning and realized that they needed to sort of refocus and help them, people with their intimacy issues. So that's so what a surrogate partner does is really, again, very similar to what I do, but they work together with a talk therapist. So then the structure is that a patient comes in and they meet with the person running the clinic first, who's my boss. And then if she assessed that, okay, this person is really ideal for this type of work and could really benefit from working with a surrogate partner, she'd send them to us. And then we would meet with them and work with them. And then through a number of, like, usually between 10 and 15 sessions of like 45 minutes to an hour, we would work with them and really help them address whatever the issue was. And the main issues, as you probably know, right, are premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction of all forms, inexperience, all the shame and all the issues that go along with having missed the boat or believing that one has, so inexperience. So all of anything you can imagine that goes along with that. So all of the anxiety, shame, stress, in my opinion, everyone's been indoctrinated, right? So sex is, I work with what's hidden, or what's not talked about, right? The taboo. But and some people have never even experienced touch. So it's just even sometimes as basic as introducing someone to what it actually is like to touch another human being. So yeah, sometimes it's very basic and rudimentary. And I'm an educator, so So a surrogate partner and also an intimacy behavioral therapist wears many hats, right? Therapist, yes, coaching sometimes, and also uniquely positioned to be able to create an intimate relationship while working with someone where they can actually practice as if. So it's really wonderful. It's actually really quite amazing. It's quite an honor actually to do this work. So, yeah.
That's where the sort of calling comes in.
Exactly.
What would you say, do you commonly see nowadays? Because I think, there's a stigma about pornography. You see a lot of things on the internet about, like, people say, it's detrimental to the brain. I think there's a lot of people that are suffering from loneliness nowadays. So what would you say, is the most common intimacy problem that people come to you with? And is there actually some underlying issue that, it's an unresolved past trauma or whatever else that is possibly really stemming that, but they think it's related to something else?
Exactly. That's perfect point, because what I find, if whatever the functioning issue that's driving a person to seek help, what I find is that unless there's a medical issue where, of course, I send them first to let's say it's an erection issue, right? So, okay, urologist, you got to rule in and out. I find out what they've done, what they haven't done, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And if we now come to the fact that, okay, it's not like, some kind of blood flow issue, some kind of, physical contradiction, as they say. If it's not that, then I pretty much have my answer, right? That it's really anxiety based. Often it can be trauma based, but what drives people in my work, it's very unique in that the majority of the people that I have worked with do what I call self-select, right? They seek out kind of incognito, right? Unless there's an enlightened therapist or doctor or health center psychiatrist, which I have worked with many, who say, hey, you know what, let me do some research. I think this person might help you. And then they help refer them to me. Or they find me themselves as a patient and say to their doctor, therapist, whoever. And sometimes we work together. But I think beneath a lot of what I find out is that the issue that's bringing them in is a symptom, like to what you're saying, Dave. It's a symptom of a deeper dis-ease, that has layers, usually, as we all do, right? And sometimes it can be, it can be held trauma in the body, because now science finally supports what body-oriented people have known for millennia, that, that trauma that happens to us gets etched into the body, right, into the DNA of our cells. So that needs to be released. And this work has the power, at times I've witnessed it, to release that through breath, but then sensation focus, being willing to dive into one's inner world in such a way that you actually can, or they can, breathe into the discomfort of whatever the strong emotion is that is coming up. And be able to release it, and replace it, right, with more ease, more relaxation when they're giving and receiving touch. So
I was going to ask, do you feel a lot of people come in with their ego is really hurt or something? Because I would imagine it's emasculating to a lot of men.
In so many ways, it's the last place on earth, honestly, that a person would want to find themselves. So, it's not sexy. So, it's funny. Anyway, made me think of something else. But yes. I mean, you can use words like devastated, despair. So there's a lot of needing to. A person coming to see me has already prepared themselves, if you will, by seeking as much as possible and finding that they're not getting the result they want, and then they find out about what I do and say, it either resonates with them or it doesn't. And so I have a phone call with people, and I really, find out through that phone call if they're really if they really are a candidate for this. I mean, if they're really willing to face themselves in this very direct and very kind of profound way. Yeah. So, yeah, being willing and being vulnerable, because intimacy, one of the definitions of it is to be willing to be vulnerable with another human being. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy, as you just said, for like the male ego. Or anyone, frankly.
Any ego, really. I guess.
Ego,
yeah.
Exactly. Because I also work with women. Now, women do not seek this out at the same rate. And, and there's one word reason why. What do you think that is? Penis. Can I say that on here?
Absolutely. You can say whatever you want.
That's what women don't have. All right. So therefore, women's issues are more subtle, a little bit more intimacy oriented in terms of getting comfortable with touch in their bodies and relating, less functioning stuff, right? Now, I'm not working with like functioning issues with female anatomy, if you will,
Sure.
As I try to help or educate, like I said, I'm an educator with people who are inexperienced and who just don't know and don't want to admit that they don't know. I mean, who does? Yeah.
So would you say for, I think our audience is probably mostly males, but from the female perspective, a lot of times I've always heard it's, female mind needs to be stimulated, but it sounds like the male mind just as much could be a detriment.
Yeah.
How would you compare the two?
The mind needs to be quieted, right? So that one can go into one's body and really feel what you actually are experiencing in the moment, and using the breath and the focus to keep coming back. Because you're in the moment and you're really in it, and then up into the head and start to freak, or the subtlety of how anxiety begins to percolate is something that in the early sessions working with someone, I work with them literally sitting on the floor face to face, really, here we are, let's do this breathing, and then really focusing on like, when you engage in this, with me, what do you notice? So there's a lot of curiosity and a lot of discovering early on into how a person is experiencing their anxiety, and then being willing to, again, like I said, slip in and sit in the discomfort of that. As humans, we all know we avoid it. We avoid conflict, we avoid discomfort, we have physical, emotional, spiritual, any kind, right? However, the only way is through. And to feel, release, and allow to, and behavioral therapy is about replacing, right? You can't get rid of the fight, flight, freeze that's wired in, but you can replace it and lessen the effect, tamp it down. Yeah.
So what would you say is the number one intimacy problem that you see? What do most people come to you with?
I would say some form of erection issue.
And that's caused by shame and anxiety.
I mean, like I said, we've ruled out medical, then it's caused by, deep fear, anxiety, humiliation, all kinds of encodements that have been, that a person has like really made their own and really believe it, really believe that they're not enough, that they have to perform, that they have to somehow conquer something. I guess that's partly a male thing. I get that, but it comes into play here. Yeah, definitely does. Like, I just want to fix this. I just want to get this to work, and then I'm good, right? I don't want to deal with anything emotional or trauma. Talk to me about trauma. I get that, and I don't. I mean, it's really, if it comes up, it comes up, and then we work with it. I don't diagnose. A person's already diagnosed themselves.
So what would you say to a person that says, well, I'm fine, I just need the right partner? That's my problem. I just haven't found the right partner.
Well, then they wouldn't be coming to me, would they? Right?
No, well, you're right. That's fair.
I mean,
how would you challenge that story?
Well, part and parcel of working with me means that you're engaging in a relationship. So that's where traditional therapy can't quite cross over, because there's so many constraints put between the therapist and the patient, right? So, and I, no problem with that. That is what it is. It's just that what I found is that when you can take some of that away and just be really real and present and focused with another person face to face for a prolonged period of time, that's intimate right there, right? So the training that they're receiving is kind of part and parcel and wrapped into developing the intimacy relationship they're having with me. So it's, I in some way am tasked at times with being like every woman, like particularly for people who haven't had experience. I would say that's the next. I would say it's erection issues, premature ejaculation issues. This is all regulation stuff. It's all. It's not psychology. It's not psychological. It's very interesting, although the head affects it. And then I would say the third is inexperience, or just I don't know what I don't know, and I'm afraid. I don't want to date and then find out. They find out, right? And interestingly, particularly with guys who are like grew up being told that they're good looking and they're athletic and they're there, yeah, but they have a secret. And many of those guys are like, shit, if I go on this date or if and things get going, oftentimes someone will come to me and say, yeah, I'm coming to you, but I want to really address this now because this gal, I know if we go out the next time, we're going to get down to it. And I don't know what I'm doing. And you can't teach that. You can't say, okay, here's the manual. It's like I use swimming. I can give you the best written book about swimming, but how much is that going to help you when you jump in the water, right? So it's the physical versus the mental, the ego. Yeah.
Maybe the book will float. Who knows?
Yeah, but who knows? Exactly. If they could write a book, look, I'm like, hey, if you find something that works, do it. Like, I'm not saying my way or the highway at all. Because this is very unique work that only is for those who kind of are the brave, the few. What is that? I don't know. The few, the brave.
The Marines, in other words?
Something. I'm sorry to do a plug for the Marines, but that's funny.
Yeah. That's cool. Interesting.
We'll get out the crayons later.
That's right.
Yikes. Yeah. So, yeah, it's great. It's sad. I'm not, but somehow in my life, like I have a big space for that. Like I'm able to really join in with wherever a person is. That's part of my training, is to really connect and have the wisdom to really speak to the person right in front of me. Like really, yeah. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
So. Sexual confidence, right? So that's
sexual confidence, right?
If they know what they're doing, you could say there's sexual confidence. What does that look like behaviorally? In other words, what do you see somebody do differently when they exhibit that?
When they have more confidence? That's a good question. Let's see. I would say that no hesitation. I would say a sense of being like, I get a sense from them that they're more grounded, like they're more in their bodies, and slowing down, and really, it looks like experiencing the person feeling like more fluid in their interaction with me, like less hesitancy and more willing to experiment without being judged, because it's completely judge-free environment. And, once a person, again, all based on trust, right? So none of this can exist without creating a container, of being able to really feel like, okay, does this gal know what she's talking about? Do I really think, can I get along with her? Do I think she, it's like just very basic stuff. Like, do we jive? It's like that simple. And I can usually tell that on the phone. Because there's, if we don't, we don't. Like, I don't try to force anything or convince, because that's all hotel, right? So if somebody needs to be convinced, what's that? No, then you're not ready, like, so,
that makes
right? I mean, it's just people reveal themselves, right? So it's not that difficult to for me to get right to like where someone's really coming from, because people don't make this call to me randomly. Right. I mean, some people wait years to make the call, or at least months. So it's, I know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of trepidation before we get to the hello, So, and I I'm sensitive to that, right?
So as a former actor, I know, because when I was getting into it was right when the Me Too Time's Up whole thing happened. So that was a whole sea change in the way now you have to have intimacy coordinators on set.
I know, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All of this other stuff. So, but that translated to where even I was taking an impromptu class, right? Improvisational class. And even then it was like, even in that space, people didn't feel safe. And they said, well, you have to tell, or you almost have to like tell me ahead of time what you're going to do before you do it improvisationally, which doesn't make any sense. But
right.
You know, we're going through these times and then it's like, well, exhibiting sexual confidence in a place where nobody feels safe. Now, the women now, ostensibly, right, they did it so they could feel more safe, right, in the workplace, those in the entertainment industry. But what ended up being the case is now everybody's weirded out. Nobody knows what to do. And
it's a landmine. It's a landmine.
If I, quote unquote, like you just said, if I feel more confident in my body, I don't hesitate. I go out and I say what. But what if that person then takes it as some sort of attack? No, and then you got real problems. I mean, so, you know, how do you deal with that kind of stuff?
That's a real issue. I mean, since I noticed since the Me Too 2017, right? That since then, many of the patients I saw started to talk about that, and in a way that I hadn't heard before. Those, of course, those dating in particular, right? Those that were trying to date, were finding that if they were already fearful. So I had many people I work with were like fearful of, even before Me Too, fearful of being too much or to not really knowing how to pick up clues. That's another thing. Like if you're not really, you need to be really able to feel into your own body before you can sense where someone else is at. So a lot of times they'd be terrified because they're so afraid already. Oh, I'm going to miss all the cues. I'm not in the present. I may do something wrong. I may stumble over myself. My gesture might be taken wrong. And so that just got amped up with Me Too. Absolutely. People, I mean, I would talk to people about this quite a bit. Because of course here it didn't exist, the Me Too movement in my realm. And I see the positive, of course. I know why it had to happen. That said, this may be a little controversial. I think it got hijacked a bit, like a lot of these movements. So I feel like, I think in the sense that the whole try to divide and, male versus female, there's a lot of that going on in the world, right? There's this split everywhere, right? So it happened with that too, as a result, where women were like, he looked at me funny. I mean, I even had somebody come in and tell me a story about being in the gym, and I don't know, he just looked sideways at a woman. He glanced over at this woman, and she freaked out. She's like, "Did you just take a picture of me, or what?" And she went to the management, and he was like stunned. He was like the nicest guy. Like he would never do anything. So yeah, there was definitely, it helped to create an environment of real distrust and like, I really empathized with a lot of guys. Now, of course, I'm not condoning. Yeah, sure, there was a lot of malfeasance in that world.
Oh, yeah.
But women taking advantage of of course, that's goes back again millennia, because we've been in a patriarchy for thousands, right? So that's just part of it, right? But I really, especially for the guys who just didn't know, they're like, what if I try to make a move now? What is she going to think?
Well, that's it. It's like, how do you date in this environment? Like, how do you feel like?
Yeah, there were times I kind of have that dating coach cap on. It's well, what's funny is, it's not funny, it's very sad, but I feel like in the last year or so, maybe a little longer, I think a lot of people have just given up. That's what I'm seeing. I'm hearing.
Yeah.
They're just saying, you know what, you've got a generation coming up with no social skills, right? So in order to build an intimate relationship, you got to have some basic social skills, right? So when they don't have that, well then, so people just go, you know what, this is too much work. I just can't, I can't do this. So pornography, maybe sitting around waiting for the AI bots, I don't know, but many people have given up. And that's very sad. I've been seeing this article. I just saw this article yesterday. It said, we're almost at sextinction. I was like, holy shit. What the hell?
Sextinction? That sounds bad.
And then another headline said, sex is gone. It's like, well, that's pretty wild. Why are they messaging that? That's so bizarre. Why is that a narrative? Anyway, it's fascinating when you go into the social science of it all. Like, but anyway.
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. I mean, from that perspective, it seems like birth rates are obviously down in most Western civilization. Yeah. I know even in Japan and other places, Europe especially. But, I think to that point, what do you recommend for people nowadays? Because I do know a lot of folks that are struggling with dating, and, it seems like you talk to girls and they're just like, oh, guys don't talk to me or approach me anymore. But then it's almost like if you do approach them,
you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
They're just like, hey, fuck off. Like, I don't even want to talk to you. Like, why are you bothering me? And it's just like, oh, sorry. I was just saying hello.
Cops. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. Well, the dating sites are horrible. I mean, you know that, right?
They've gotten worse and full of bots and full of like
Tinder, Hinge, all that. So
yeah.
The guys I know that are on those sites are just so disillusioned. I mean, have just either stopped using them, and then what? But what I'm hearing is there's a positive, and that is the pendulum always swings, right? So what I'm seeing is that more and more people are meeting in person again. They are. I mean, that is the solution, to actually go against the grain and say, hey, let's go out. I mean, if you go to the bars anywhere in the city, right, they're full, right? So people are, getting together in person, but I think that's really the solution, because nothing replaces life to life, heart to heart, right? Nothing. So nothing ever will. I don't care how sophisticated our AI gets, when my avatar comes out to meet your avatar, it's not the same. So never will be. Sorry, transhumanists, not going to work.
Send the robots.
Yeah. But whatever. I mean, it's just, it feels like definitely kind of like swimming upstream, for sure. I mean, I always have been one to swim upstream, but now it's really where, like I said, people just said, well, it's way too much of a pain in the ass to even bother. So
and then with the birth rates being super low, I mean, I look like years ago. I mean, I know my grandparents, like they had like 13 kids, 14 kids. I mean, wow. Clearly they were not bored at night, I guess you could say.
There's a lot of reasons, though, for that, too, because also many died in childbirth, too. So they would have many to make sure they had a few to carry it on. But you're right. No, it was definitely testosterone levels are low. I mean, our greater society has been poisoned, right? Mm-hmm. By everything, the food, the water, the drugs, the So, of course, one of the outgrowths of that's going to be lower testosterone. And I personally think this is all by design. I mean,
Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm going to get too far off, but yeah. So
no, but we talk about that kind of stuff.
That's what you do. Yeah, Arcana.
Well, yeah, and I think there's just so many people taking TRT nowadays and everything in between. That, like, I'm a gym guy. I haven't delved into that realm, but I know a lot of people that are in their 20s, 30s taking TRT or steroids.
Yep.
And, obviously that has its side effects too, where they have erectile dysfunction when they're on certain cycles. So they need
well, that's how it is. You take one thing and then you get side effects, and you take just something for that, then you take something for that. That's the whole that's how it's created. It's not created to help anybody. That's
right.
Yeah. What?
That's so very interesting.
Never has been.
I don't want to raise, I don't want to offend anybody or say anything. I'm just curious your opinion. Obviously with testosterone levels dropping, we know that for a fact.
Yep.
Do you think in conjunction with some of the feminist movement that's also created some issues in the dating world, or not really?
Well, the feminist movement, that's a whole topic, isn't it?
It is.
It's another one I think that got hijacked, but meaning that I think that, equal rights and, my body, my choice. I mean, there's some basic stuff there. But I think selling to women and men that, to be a happy human being, you absolutely have to work outside the home, that you're not worthy if you're just a housewife, like there's this whole so I think there's this really dark side to the feminist movement, which I won't go that far into, but I do think, yeah, absolutely, it has really skewed things so that, what's up, what's down, I feel like a lot of people are lost because they were sold, okay, you can have it all. You can certainly have it all, which you can't. So what does that mean? What do you value, right? What's more important than your own family? And not to say that we shouldn't get out and do, and have a career. It's almost like, it's either or like they're mutually exclusive. Something they're not mutually exclusive. But I feel like it's definitely, a lot of indoctrination. I mean, I really do. And people really, like, my mom benefited from it, for example. I mean, she was able to work outside the home later in life after being a homemaker. And she was able to realize some of her potential in a way she wouldn't have, obviously, that her mother didn't have. But I think, again, it's gone too far. And it comes down to what you value, what in the end, right? And I just think that, it's all geared towards materialism and, just keep generating income and a lot of external, a lot of external kind of seeking happiness outside of oneself. Yeah, that's been the real focus. So, and I don't know if that answered your question, but. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me take it back to your realm a little bit. So
my realm.
Your realm. So your kingdom, if you will.
Queendom, I guess.
Guided touch exercises. So what does that mean?
What does
it not mean?
Okay.
Where are the sort of lines there?
Right. So it's very, again, it's so it's a great challenge, but it's like talking about something that's physical, right? So again, it's built-in limitation. That said, it's really about, first, there's two tools that I introduce. The first is, a deepened breath practice, because that's the key to life, right? And the key to moving out of the head dropping down into the body and being able to begin to have a relationship there and a feel and a sense. So if you can start to feel in your body, then when you reach out, so a touch exercise is, okay, here's my hand. Okay, I see your hand. All right, so now what are you going to do with it? Well, why don't you take it? Why don't you hold it? Okay, now that you got it, close your eyes and begin to feel it. Okay, so what do you feel? Okay, well, it feels warm. It feels hard. It feels soft. Having someone describe literally what they're feeling helps them to develop a physical relationship with that. It's like, it's not intuitive. It's like, oh, it's nice. It's pretty. No. What does it feel like to you? Yeah. And then all kinds of things can come out, like, as someone's touching, maybe they feel a bump, but they don't want to say anything. They don't want to embarrass me or offend me, right? So it's a lot of interesting things come up, because they'll be like, it feels rough. And they go, oh, no, not rough. I'm like, okay, it's okay. But just all these things that we work on, with intimate relationships, people are afraid to say, hey, when you're touching me, that feels really nice, but it kind of is a little annoying on this part. People are really generally very terrified of identify or sharing what's not working, or even knowing what they do want. And that's another piece of touch exercises, which is discovering, what feels good to me? What doesn't? And without the pressure of this has got to lead somewhere. Because when we're in intimate relationships touching, it's always moving towards, right, more intimacy, usually, right? It's more, the adrenaline starts, cortisol, and people start to, get a little freaked out, so they're not in their bodies anymore, and they start to panic a little bit, and then they start to go fast, right? And so all of this, it's like, okay, let's take all that out. Okay, we're just going to take all that out. We're just going to sit here, and we're just going to focus on, what do you feel? What do you notice when you give touch and when you receive touch? So it starts in non-threatening areas. Usually the hand is pretty non-threatening, and up to the elbow. It's like, here, you could have my hand, you could have my elbow. And then we reverse it. So they give one of the, I think, pieces of magic of the way this works is that it always, the patient goes first so that they don't mimic. They just experiment. And of course, all this, like, am I doing this right? Is this okay? Like, all these things are coming up. So after an exercise, we talk about it. I'm like, okay, so what came up for you? And it's good to name it, right? I mean, I also do self-image. Like, what about you physically do you like? What don't you like? Well, of course, usually people have a long list of what they don't like, and then a lot of guys are like mystified. What do you mean? What do I like about myself? It's like, I have no idea. So
that's interesting. So you're saying women have a better understanding of what they like and don't like than guys do in their bodies? Yes.
I'm not sure if I could make that big of a statement. I would say that it's anxiety and fear and shame and all of that stuff that keeps male or female from being able to have the confidence and the lack of experience to be able to go, so some of it's like, okay, let's just experiment. And they're like, oh, I do like a light touch on my arm. Interesting. I didn't know that. Oh, I don't like the nails though. I have long nails. Or, just, and so it gradually becomes a little bit more intimate, meaning going from, okay, so arms, and then, then we're doing like kind of, we're wearing clothes, but then we start to, when a person starts to get comfortable with giving and receiving touch in areas that are non-threatening, because you don't need to add that at that point. They want to discover without all getting freaked out. Then we move to, okay, close your eyes. Okay. And closing eyes is important. So you're not distracted. You're not freaking out when you're touching, right? You can just, and then, then they would touch down the body, down the front of the body. Okay. Describing. Okay. So you get to breasts, right? Okay. Squishy. Or they might start freaking out. Okay. Breathe, pause. There's a lot of breathing and pausing going on. A lot. Where it's just like, okay, let's just hang and then start again. So it's always like a person, so and then gradually, it depends on where a person's at, but by the fourth session, it's usually, I kind of have an idea of like how fast, or not fast, but how to advance. Whether it's time to like disrobe to underwear. So then we sit in our underwear for a while and just like look at each other and do these exercises. So again, we got like normalizing things, and really that are usually done, literally and figuratively in the dark. So just kind of like, so that by the time we get to stuff where we're actually touching more sexual areas, it's not accompanied with the level of anxiety that would be there, right? So that we can always pause and go back, right? So it's a person's adaptation to using these tools is what shows me the way. Like, oh, okay, I see where they're at. Okay, so maybe we need to go over this exercise again, because touch is so unfamiliar that one and done doesn't usually work. And many of the exercises are like layered on top of each other, if you will. Does that make sense? It's like, yeah. And then, they lay down, they do the back of the body touching, and then the front of the body. But not sexual at first, just skip over the sexual areas. And then all kinds of things can come up, like, how am I doing? Did I do, and you get all kinds of interesting, pat, 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 or deep, 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 it's very interesting. And then, it gradually moves towards applying the tools to why they're there, right? Okay. So eventually, if it's for the penis, then we're going to work with that. We're going to be touching. So it's touch. So where's the line? So no intercourse. So say it straight. Like, and I tell people that this isn't about having sex and like having experience. Like, okay, you can go, like we talked originally, right? You want to have sex or try to have sex. Hopefully, that's another reason why a lot of they don't want to pay for it, because they don't want to, again, be humiliated. Like, I don't want to be with a professional who's going to see that I can't do this well. So there's all kinds of interesting, of course, there's the moral and the legal, and there's a lot of other issues as to why people don't want to go to an escort. But where with entertainment, that's one thing. That's a one and done usually. These gals aren't trained. But could they be really helpful in this way? Yes, because they're comfortable with their bodies, they're sexual beings, So yeah, I mean, there are women that have done this work, do this work, who come out of the sex field. And that makes sense. You know, yeah. Anyway.
So,
yeah.
Let's see. So, what's an example of like a real breakthrough that somebody's had? You know, where someone went from like fear and shame to that kind of calm confidence and
Yeah. I know. I work.
What's that look like?
I work with one person who was, a good looking guy. From the outside, you'd never know. Very confident, and appearing, and successful. That's another thing. Often people will wait to work on these issues until they got everything else in order. Like I made money, and so this guy was one of those, and very lovely person too. He was convinced, though, that he had a small penis. He was convinced, and because of that, he was terrified of getting undressed in front of anyone. Okay, let alone, reality was he didn't have this. It was normal. It was something something had happened to him, where he really believed this. And it was like in fact, it was one of the situations where I was working with a psychiatrist and also a therapist. Well, there was three of us working with him, actually. It was interesting. And they were floored, particularly the psychiatrists, because, psychiatrists all talk, right? It's psychoanalytical, it's in your head. Floored. They couldn't believe the progress he made because he became like, very comfortable and just like very accepting of his body and in the course of our working together. And he got a more realistic picture of himself. And he believed me because he never believed anybody before that. So that was pretty amazing. And then I had another person I worked with who just had such deep, humiliating experiences in a marriage he had been in with a horribly cold wife, difficult, anyway, whatever. I never met her, but from what he told, and I was able to really help him reclaim his, I think in a way, his sovereignty. I mean, like his sense of being a man again. Yeah. And because he would retreat into like a kind of shame and a place where he just couldn't get out of. And we really, we worked with a lot of well, this is intimacy behavioral therapy, but there's also cognitive, right? So we also use some of that, like, messaging, like what he's telling himself, because he really felt that, very emasculated, frankly. That was the bottom line. So many people, I've worked with people like with premature ejaculation, for example, who learned how to tolerate the intensity of how quickly they trained their bodies to get aroused. And when I teach them how to actually slow that down through practice, slow down, pause, breathe into it, and get to different levels that used to take them through. Many, many people I work with who could 5, 10, 15 minutes, they could just, so it's retraining. And on some level, it's a real physical retraining in the body because we have habits, right, that we create.
Sure.
And then the body just does it automatically. It's like, oh, here we go. And then boom, I'm done. It's like being pee is, you're done before you start kind of thing. And that's, anyway, I use analogies. I get really creative. And so I let people know I know what's going on and that I'm really looking at this in a practical way. Like, how can we really use these tools to help you? So when you're not here, you can use these. So, it's a 3 to 4 month program for most people. And that's usually science supports. It takes about that amount of time to begin to learn new behavioral ways of being, if you will. Yeah. So, yeah. I have so many people that I've been able to really see tremendous breakthroughs, and what an honor and what a privilege and what a testament to, how people can heal, and themselves, right? I'm just the guy. I'm the guide, right? So, yeah, in that way.
I was just going to ask, how important would you say is communication with the partner? Because it sounds like obviously that married person was emasculated.
Yep.
That other individual clearly, had body issues or whatever
right.
else. But, with that being said, if somebody's in a relationship or dating, they have these intimacy issues or whatever else, how important would you say is it for them to communicate with that partner? Be open about it, because like you were saying earlier, that creates intimacy, being able to communicate and
yes,
be vulnerable, right?
It's critical. That's, I think, by practicing sharing it with me. So usually I'm the first and only person that they've, usually, not always, but most of the time, that they've ever gone and really shared in depth, because I take a full history, you know, in the first session, like all therapy, right? You start with an intake and talk. You know, just that alone, sometimes they're like, oh, phew, I feel like so much better because I let someone know what I've been holding. But it's critical. And so in the sessions, they get to practice that, you know, like being really on. I mean, I ask a lot of questions about what's, you know, so I think that gives them that opportunity. And then I'm encouraging them, yes, please. And then we sometimes do role play, you know, so you can practice, like, you know, how would you talk to her about this? And also I think it's really crucial for them to experience me and thereby other women as human beings who also are insecure and vulnerable and have issues, right? So, you know, women too, they are self-conscious. They're, you know, a lot of guys, it's funny, you'd think, oh, you're taking your clothes off with a guy. Well, yeah, but I'm doing it gradually, and they're just about as nervous. They're more embarrassed. You know what I mean? That because it's not leading to, and they know what's not going to happen. So they're like, okay, shit. And then they get very, you know, sometimes aware of how much they've been holding it in. And so it's critical, yeah, to be able to just be honest. And when you're honest, then it opens the way for your partner to say, you know, yeah, I'm a little nervous too. And I've had a few people try that and tell me, they're like, yeah, I told her I was just, it had been a while and I didn't know really what I was doing. And she was like, oh, whew, yeah, me too. So it, you know, it levels the playing field, right? So it's not us versus them so much, right? The women will never know, you know, kind of thing. Yeah.
How does past trauma show up in an intimate situation, even when you think you might be past it?
I would say, you know, freezing, like just, you know, deer in headlights. I would say, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest things, like disassociation, right? Just like, I'm here, but I'm not really here. I mean, I one time worked with someone and I said, I just don't know what possessed me to say this, but I said, well, where are you right now? And he said, I'm in the hallway. I was like, oh, shit. Okay. All right. Interesting. So I think that's how, like, disembodied, like, you know, trauma can, because it's, the human body's mechanism is to, you know, survival, to protect us from that kind of thing, right? To not feel or not experience. So we shut it off. And then it comes out some really other creepy way, right? It can come out through, you know, panic attacks or, you know, so many things. Physical illness, physical problems in certain parts of the body, you know, that because it's not being able to be expressed, right? So it doesn't go away. It just, suppress, repress, right? It goes down. So it's I think the key to healing is a willingness to accept that there is this pain and this trauma without having to figure it out, because we have these brains that say, well, if I could just figure it out, like what happened to me or what, that's not gonna get rid of it. It's good to know, but it's not gonna take it out of your body, it's not gonna remove it. So I think people, but sometimes it just shows up in avoidance, just like don't even want to look you in the eye, right? Like looking down, looking aside. So, but I'll call people on that because I sit face to face with them. So I'm like, hey, what you keep looking away? What's up with that? So we just, but gentle. It's got to be really just got to call. I call people out, but I do very gently and in the moment, right? If I see they're avoiding, you can't push that though, because trauma. There's a healer I know who said, I have to credit it to his mentor, his name I forget, but he said, healing is never convenient. It doesn't go according to schedule, right? So, yeah, it shows up in lots of ways. Yeah, but a lot of avoidance, dancing around. I mean, when I talk to somebody for the first time and they give me so much information, I'm like, wow, okay, so what are we not saying here? It's like, anyway.
So there's some interesting things where I think women want to be loved more than anything else. Men want to be respected, I think, more than
I've read that. I've seen
they
that.
don't want to be in a place where they're going to have their partner cut them down publicly or say things that where they're going to feel less than, especially in front of their friends or peers. That's a big thing for guys. I don't know how big that is for women. I mean, it may or may not be, but so the question is, what are the green flags that someone would look out for and say, okay, this is a safe partner to want to invest in and grow with, let's say, outside of the sexual attraction piece of it, right? Well, oftentimes that could be a liability because you find somebody who you're very attracted to and then you're like, this is not a good fit for me in any other way.
Right. So then there's a dilemma, right?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, ask me the direct question again. What is it?
So in other words, what are the green flags that would show up in a healthy relationship or the potential for a healthy relationship?
Oh, that I might like, okay, I might encourage a patient or here. I would say, I think a willingness again to be present and honest and really just being willing to be seen just as you are, unadorned. Right. So I think that the real key is that it comes from the person who's seeking. In other words, that they can sense and feel those green flags. Do you see what I mean? That they're enough aware and comfortable in their own skin, if you will, that when another person is signaling to them their availability and their interest, that they're in a receptive. It comes down to being receptive, to being able to pick that up. So I think what the green flags would be somebody that is looking you directly in the eye, who's taking an interest in you, who's listening to you, who's asking questions, not so self-absorbed. But I think you're right that men, it seems, do want to have more of a sense of being the man in the room. The woman wants to be seen as sexy or appealing, desirable. And yes, in an intimate relationship, loved. And there is that more, people say that and I think it's true generally with sex. Women, myself included, tend to enjoy or want or naturally cultivate a emotional connection out of that physical. Whereas for many men, that may not be a requirement. They're not maybe not so interested in the emotional aspect of being in a relationship. They may, but we tend to judge that too. Like it's better if you are. Is it? I don't know. It's I've worked with so many different types of people. I mean, even people on this spectrum, and people call them neurodivergent, all these names that we have now, but I work with somebody who wasn't attracted to men or women, was kind of asexual, but kind of wanted to maybe have a family. So it was like, how could I fake this? How could I attract somebody like me who really isn't interested in sex so much?
We just sit around staring at each other. Yeah.
Called a test tube.
I know, right? I don't think he was there yet.
You bring up an interesting point because, you often see psychopathy, right? So psychopaths have no empathy, but they get good at faking it so they can survive in society and get their goals met and everything like that. So you have somebody who's asexual, and is it a fake it till you make it kind of thing? Is it like, well, start having sex until you like it kind of thing? Or
I don't know. In this case, I've worked with a couple, but this one person comes to mind that was a little bit of definitely an anomaly. He said that, I was like, what does anything turn you on? He was like, well, he said something about predator birds. I don't know, strange.
Birds of prey? Yeah.
Yeah, birds of prey, thank you. And also, he kind of liked it when he saw a woman that was in good shape and she was working out. and just like sweat was glistening. So it was very specific. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. But then there was lots of things that were off the table. Like, I don't like this. I don't like that. And didn't really want to touch. And I was like, well, we may have a problem here. We're going to have to touch. I mean, so it was like, I learn a lot from the people I work with, right? I mean, so it's like, okay, I'm coming with some tools to teach or to show. Where's the entry point here? Like, how much, is because some people, what measure of success is going to look different for every person, right? I mean, it's, there is no success, you don't graduate, in that way. It's kind of, it's not linear, this type of work. It's not like, like get a syllabus and this session we're going to do this and this session we're going to do that. It does progress, but anyway, I digress. But I think, I've worked with, I've even still working with somebody who's, kind of full blown, like autistic, right? So I've worked with this person and helping him become more emotionally connected to people and touch too, with touch, because autism, no touch, no. So this is a rare patient, somebody that I see ongoing, that I've seen for many years actually.
That's
to help. Yeah. It's not my specialty, and I have to be careful about that, because when I was really developing my practice, there was just all these people that were like, I have, these families with autistic people that were like, we need your help. I'm like, I can't, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to just work with like the regular population to start with. but there is a need there, for sure.
What's the difference between somebody that comes to you and says, I don't really have a libido, or asexual, or whatever you call it, and my nervous system doesn't feel safe? What's the difference between there?
I would be wondering why they're coming to me. Do you know what I mean?
Well, in the sense of like, they want to feel safe, right? They want to feel, or they want to improve, whatever that situation might be.
Well,
in that sense.
I think that it would just come down to the value they derive from the early sessions of making that life-to-life connection and beginning to feel safe in the environment with me and trusted. Like, the environment that I work in is warm and embracing, and that it's I think that just through the experience, it's usually by like the first 4 sessions are like the foundation, and by the end of that, 4 or 5 maybe, so much transformation has happened, right? So that we've built a trusting relationship already. They know that I'm safe. And if they don't, or if they find that they just can't quite get there, then they wouldn't continue.
Well,
most people do, but
I wasn't so much talking about your interaction with them, but just they come to you saying they generally don't feel safe being around touch and things like that.
Yes.
Kind of yeah.
So what were you asking about? Like,
well, so in other words, like, how do you see the difference between somebody who's asexual and somebody who's got trauma? In other words, or maybe that's the same thing. I don't know.
I don't think they're the same, but I think it's a discovery process, because like for the people that I've spoken to who, sexuality comes up. I've worked with a few people who were wondering about their proclivities. Like, do I like men? Do I like women? Like, who, where am I? And part of coming to me is to try to kind of figure that out. And it's not a mental thing. They kind of, it becomes revealed through the work. It's kind of an osmosis thing. There's a lot of that. But it's very rare that a person who's asexual, if you will seek out this kind of work, because they're generally fully devoted to avoidance, right? So, and they don't, I've worked with people who are, very attractive by whatever society standards, and have women interested, but they're just like, I'm not interested, and I don't know what to do. So, so they might want to learn some basic touch skills just to get by, kind of thing. So I just try to meet people where they are and figure out, what is that? And then how do we go from where you are to where you want to be? So it's, and some of that's just a discovery. Like, they're not coming in 100% sure, most people with trauma, for example, don't know it. Honestly, they don't know that that's what's driving them in terms of their the more challenging behaviors that they exhibit. The things that they project to push people away. A lot of times they have no idea what's driving that. And a lot of times that doesn't really come out until much further in, right, to the situation. When people talk about being abused, when I hear that, and I hear that they've had trauma in their back, many people have, often people talk about it, it's like it's somebody else. Right? They're not connected to it, right? Only through touch, when they actually, like I've touched people in certain, like I remember working with this, it was a woman actually, she was laying on her back, and I would like put my hand, she had a lot of abuse, and I would put my hand and we'd breathe, and she'd tell me if it was safe or not. Like, okay, that's okay there. Okay, got it. Okay, and then I'd move it very slowly. Okay, let's move over here. She'd breathe into that, and she'd be like, no, you got to move your hand. I said, okay, got it. So I'd move over somewhere. So it was like just reintroducing safe touch or introducing safe touch to where unsafe touch had left its imprint. Does that make sense? I've done that. I've worked with people on that. Yeah. Men too. Yeah. And so many people in the genital area, just have, like what I often say to people, usually it's like you're peeing, what are the different things? You're washing, you're masturbating. Okay, so these are the different things you're doing. I leave anything out that, in terms of what attention you're given down here. But what about kind of loving attention that's not asking anything of you, that's just allowing you to feel into what you're, experiencing in this moment, and being willing to kind of ride that out and be accepted at that level, right? That it's not just this thing I have that it's not doing what I want. It's kind of like, yeah, like more acceptance and integration. That makes sense? Is it? Yeah. Because again, I have a handicap here. I remember one person saying, "Well, you don't have a penis, so how are you qualified?" I was like, okay, well, yeah, I don't think a lot of the guys I work with would go to a guy.
No, I was just thinking that myself.
I don't think so.
That probably wouldn't be my first choice, too.
They need to feel some level of, comfort, attraction, some level, even though it's we're not dating, obviously, but yeah. So it's one of those. I work well between the blurred lines, Yeah.
I'm sure you must have some other questions. I'm sure I have a few more.
This is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two men. Woohoo.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to come to us for advice on that, but
I learn a lot. What do they say? You teach what you need to learn, right?
Interesting point.
Yeah. I have my own stuff. Yeah.
Just throwing out some random questions. What about, there's so much talk regarding pornography, how it rewires the brain. Obviously, from a arousal perspective, it seems like it actually disconnects and disassociates, right, the pleasure from real intimacy. So a lot of people struggle with intimacy after. How would you say, how has porn truly affected people? Because, clearly years ago, you might pick up a Playboy or the Sears catalog or Victoria's Secret magazine or something.
Right.
Nowadays, there's so many guys that seem to pay for OnlyFans models because these women are making way more money than we are for various reasons. Mm-hmm. It's kind of scary that there's so many people feeding into that. And, what do you say to that? And how is this, pornography really affecting, men, women, and relationships nowadays?
Yeah, it's when I speak about pornography, I always start with a disclaimer, like I'm not speaking for morality. I don't go there. I don't really have any judgment that way about whether or not what somebody wants to watch or what they watch. However, I do see the direct effects of it in terms of the disconnection, right, between their mind and body again, right? So when you're visually stimulated, your body's not always coming along for the ride at the same speed, if you will, right? So it's there's this natural disconnect, and also a lot of what is conveyed in pornography has a very kind of, if I can say, kind of creepy or sinister, sometimes tone underneath it. And I think that by combining that with sexual arousal, I think it creates something, can create a kind of, well, I want to say, when you think of like sexuality, there's sacred and profane, right, in terms of everything. And there's sort of this, I think what it does is it just reinforces a lot of the kind of not hatred, that's a little strong, but like, it can just perpetuate this division between men and women too. Like there's a lot of let's get her kind of stuff on pornography, violence. But there's also, I think it serves to just, to keep people just coming back to kind of fill a void. So that's the good thing I wanted to say, yes. That sometimes what I want to know is, the question I heard once I really liked was not, why are you watching or what are you watching, but rather, what is it filling, right? Because something is missing. If you're, you know what I mean? Like you're just totally into, it's like it's giving you something you're not getting somewhere else, if you will. So I just look at that, like what are you trying to fill? What are you trying to balance? Because I think people are trying to naturally become more harmonized within themselves, and they feel like, okay, I have this urge and I've got this release available to me, and it's kind of escapism too, right? Pleasure can be. Sometimes people want to jerk off just because it's like relaxing at the end of a hard day, something as simple as that, or I can't get to sleep, or, there's lots of different reasons, but I think that it does keep actual human relationships further, can help to create that because people will say to me like, well, I watch pornography, but then I just don't feel as much when I'm with a partner, when she's touching me. It just doesn't do enough. It doesn't get me excited like I'm used to getting excited by what I see.
Sure.
That makes sense. Yeah. Or
yeah, that makes sense.
If you're actually doing interactive webcam stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
And what about, you mentioned profane versus sacred? I think, from an energetic perspective, how does sex energetically connect people?
It's our life force, right? Kundalini. I mean, there isn't anything more sacred than that. I mean, it's like, how did our spirits, our souls get onto this planet, right? We came through the sexual act, without, well, at least so far. We'll see in another 5 or 10 years, but that's the main way, right? So I think that there's just innately in the human makeup is this sort of divine, if you will, spark that is transferred through, right? So I think that the act of sex itself is, it's again, I don't think there's anything more sacred in that way. It's human life, right? And there's nothing more precious, right, or dignified than human life. So, and the profane is just the twisting of that, right? Inverting it, if you will. Yeah.
So would the hookup culture of the world be profane then? Because
again, I stay away from mass generalizations. I really think it's up to each.
Sure.
I mean, because again, meeting people where they are. I mean, I when I work with someone, if they come in and they say, you know what, look, and I met these people. I don't want to have an intimate relationship. I just want to have better sex, and I just want to have it as often as possible. And I'm having erection issues. So what do I do? And okay, I can help you. Now, I'm not going to judge. It's not like you don't have to pass any tests. I mean, if you're willing to do the work, I'll help you for whatever the outcome is you want to have from it. Does that make sense? So the hookup culture, it is what it is. It's just reinforces, though, a kind of disconnection from humans, the kind of the alchemic transformation, if you will, that happens through union that really can't happen any other way. So, and that's a spiritual thing, actually, right? So, yeah. That I think that it's like everything's going on in the world, right? It comes down to a spiritual battle, doesn't it? Yeah. my opinion. But yeah, or battle, or I don't know, dance. But I think that we are reaching a really kind of crazy place where, like I said, people are giving up. You know, they just, yeah, just kind of.
Well,
it is what it is.
On that
Yeah.
giving up point, what do you think about the idea of like an AI companion? Do you think that that's all bad, or could there be any upside to it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it could be the way I think that AI can maybe be helpful is maybe like, you know, how they're using it like in Asia, like in Japan and China, like as you know, like people help like with the elderly, or like, you know, having someone around, like just to not feel so lonely, to deal with the loneliness epidemic. But not human. It's that basic. I mean, you know, energetically, there is no energy there, right? So there's no real energy in a bot or in an AI being. So that's never going to be equal. That's never going to be a way of merging again. You can't really merge with AI in the same way as human beings can. Again, so again, that's a spiritual one as well. Question, because you know, AI is moving us away from our human experience, if you will. You know, I mean, again, not all negative. I'm not. It's here to stay. We're moving into, you know, we're in the Aquarian age. It's, you know, it's all. It can be amazing, but as a replacement for intimacy, no, I don't see it. I mean, but again, for some people, they may be like, yes, it's exactly what I'm looking for. You know, so who am I to say that that's not intimate for them? Do you see what I'm saying? I don't have the be all and end all on what is, you know. I am an intimacy expert, but I'm not the only one who has an opinion on it.
No, but your opinions are interesting and valuable, obviously. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So, from an intimacy perspective, if somebody's feeling, say, disconnected from their partner, would you say in a lot of ways there might be a role of forgiveness there, or, you know, something else that needs rebuilding, you know, to reconnect to that intimacy, and, you
Absolutely.
know, kind of elaborate on that?
Well, you know, many times intimate relationships are broken from, you know, deceit, betrayal, dishonesty, and that comes down to, you know, obviously the person who's perpetrating is suffering, and then they're causing their partner to suffer, whether they're even aware of it. Again, energetically, because if you're, especially with betrayal, you know it on some level. It's happening, even if it's not obvious. So I think that those fractures have to be like admitted to and owned up to, and, you know, and healed. You know, fractures heal. But I think that it takes, again, the willingness of each partner to, like, forgiveness. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of, again, beauty of humanity, is that we have that ability to self-reflect and forgive, you know, and I think it plays a huge part, right, in, first of all, forgiving ourselves, you know, yeah, for whatever transgressions we feel we've, you know, we've participated in. But I think that, yeah, it's kind of humbling. I mean, the willingness to just, yeah, really just be like, yeah, I really effed up, and I'm sorry. You know, the thing about sorry, though, it's got to be an amends. I like amends rather than sorry, because sorry is like, you can just say it, but amends is, you know, I'm determined not to do this again. You know, or like, I'm going to learn from what from what just happened. I'm a firm believer that value can be created out of anything. So even the most horrific situations, you can transform it. Yeah. So that's my kind of one aspect of my personal philosophy.
Sure. And so here's a different variety of topic, but do you have a lot of individuals that come to you with weird kinks, or, you know, they have shame that they're into, like, certain, you
Sure.
know, whatever their kinks are?
I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the thing about kinks or fetishes, often their root comes from something earlier in life where, a simple way to put it is they got stuck there. like, so foot fetish, for example. They might have a memory of being 3 or 4 years old, sitting underneath the table when the mom and her friends are hanging out, and during the summer, and one of the women has really pretty painted toes, coming through the sandal, and and the young kid kind of, wow, fascinated, kind of like touches or rubs up against it. So that's just one example. So things can grow. Can be like often they come from something early that they're exposed to, that their sexuality kind of linked up with. And then because it's out of the norm and they don't see it talked about or represented anywhere, they feel like, oh shit, something's wrong with me, or I'm weird, or I'm. So what I like to do is, if that comes up, is just let them know, no, you're not. It's okay. You're not alone. That's a big thing too, is because people don't talk about this stuff, right? So a big thing of what happens is that it's isolation. They really feel alone. Of course, you always feel like you're the only one, even though you're not, but it doesn't offer much comfort. So I think that's one of the things I can really help with, is just, again, normal. I'd be like, okay. But again, though, I might want to say, like, if this is something that you enjoy, then if you're going to be in a partnership, you're going to have to bring this in. You're going to have to deal with it directly. You're going to have to you have to let them know what's, So, but that's not the main reason people come to see me, though. It might come out like, I have this thing about this. But then we get down to, again, getting back into their bodies, because those things can be a diversion away from, just really accepting themselves as they are. So sometimes, I'm not, I don't judge that at all. But I've seen a bit, just even my own personal life, right? I've seen people that have different proclivities, as they say. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm just curious about it rather than judging it, just to call it.
Whips and chains and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's one area I never really like to venture into. You mean like the sadomaso?
BDSM stuff, yeah.
Yeah, BDSM.
That's not my favorite. Well, just because again, personally, it's just, I get it. The power dynamic, it's all about power and submission. And I think that for some people, it can be I think it can be healing in terms of being exposed to that environment where you're trying to balance something again. So if you're very powerful, you want to submit. And if you're a submit, you want to, get that, that makes energetically. I get it. It's just that humiliation's a part of it. And I'm not interested in perpetuating humiliation. So just not.
That's fair.
I mean, and some people really want that. They're like, tell me that I'm, you know what goes on. I mean, I think you know what goes on. So yeah, the dungeon thing, it's like, okay, nah, that's not for me, but yeah.
Fair enough.
I don't want to humiliate anybody. That reinforces all the negative. And it's like, oh no, I love people. So anyway.
And last question I have.
Okay.
So in a healthy relationship and dynamic,
yes,
how often should partners have intimacy, would you say?
That's true. No, we'll not touch that one because it's so subjective. That's a subjective question. I mean, you can't, it's like that's an agreement between the person and themselves, the person and their partner. And, it's interesting because if you think about, sometimes I think about this in terms of history, back before World War II, even I think it was post World War II, is when, modernization, industrialization, people had money, they had time, they started creating families in a way where then now they had a teenagehood that didn't exist before. Kids worked. I mean, so I think like a lot of stuff was invented, that we just took for granted growing up. So I think that, that the whole sex revolution and the culture, I mean, a lot of that was kind of pushed into the culture too. I don't think, I don't really feel it was very organic. Let's just put it that way. A lot of it. So this whole thing about you should be having sex all the time, I think it also serves to make people who are really insecure. And that's the purpose. To be like, well, I'm not keeping up, another version of not keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. Like, well, they say I'm supposed to have, that's the other thing about sex studies. You can't believe them. People don't tell the truth. They just don't. You don't know. It's just like what I say when people say like, well, what do you think about this other kind of work that's intimate, let's say, that's out there? I'm like, I don't know what they do behind closed doors. They can say, just like people can't really know what you know what I mean? You just don't know. So So I really can't answer that because it's going to be according to each person, and yeah. But that makes sense. I mean, I can't answer that.
Yeah, makes
That's
sense.
I'll take a stab at it. Once a day, every day without fail.
Well, masturbation. There's always masturbation.
Yes, there is that.
Self-love, my dears.
Well, there's that whole scientific study, right, that is all over the internet. It's like men should ejaculate at least 21 times a month for a healthy prostate.
Well, I wonder about that. Again, like when you hear these like sweeping generalizations, that should be the first red flag. Like, hold on a second, who's saying this? Because there's also, if you go back into ancient history, there's the Tao and the Chinese, and they believed that sexual energy, or semen, there was only a certain amount of it, this, right? So that you shouldn't ejaculate that much because you lose your life's energy that way. So that you won that. And so they practice, right, the retraction of semen, which I'm familiar with, right? Where you can get to the point of orgasm and then retract. But so there's the opposite theory that actually, health and longevity if you actually masturbate less.
Well, the whole idea of the brahmacharya or the semen retention, right? So
Yep.
And actually, I was watching something today on that, just weirdly, coincidentally, came up on my YouTube feed, and it was talking about how basically you can get much more in touch with your psychic abilities when you're not necessarily sharing when you're not being sexually active, so that you're not
right. The celibacy, right?
Well, yeah, so you don't have the energy of someone else in your energy, right? So you have your sort of closed circle, and that helps.
That's a good way of putting it.
With other.
You're not mixing or mingling or diluting in any way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's something there.
Yep. There is something there. Absolutely. I mean, that's another form of a spiritual practice, actually, right? That people do, tantric, right? So there's all of that, which, I have background in that as well. So, like I have a background which involves so much of like anything to do with touch, sexuality. I'm a massage therapist. I did energy work. Also expression, right? I'm a dancer. Movement is huge for me, and helping people get comfortable in their bodies because I have so much ease with that for myself, right? That's a big influence in my life is the dance background.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it really, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I guess it's a lifetime of activity and fun you could do.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, it's also like my zone. You talk about like dropping into universal consciousness. I do that with dance. So it's one way. Yeah.
Well, Rebecca, I really want to thank you for being with us today. I mean, it's been an absolutely incredible experience. I think a lot of folks are probably going to learn a lot about themselves and about the other places. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that? The
website's good, savingintimacy.com. And also, if people just want to, Saving Intimacy. And then also, if they want to just get more information about like pretty much everything that I know and do, I have a YouTube channel. It's not monetized. It's a public service, and it basically have things on erectile. On everything, on every and it's Rebecca Torosian. And then I'm on X and Facebook and Instagram, but I'm honestly, full disclosure, I'm not very active on those, but but I think just Saving Intimacy, and then then it then just sends them to like, hey, just email me, and then we person to person we go from there. There's no middle person, but middle woman between me and them. So
that makes sense.
It's direct.
We'll put the link in the description.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you very much. This might really wonderful. I was really hoping to be able to just give some hope and illumination. So
I think you did much more than that, but definitely did a bunch of that too. So
I hope so. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my
100%. I mean, it's a fascinating.
Thank you so much for joining.
And honestly, it leads to men and people just being able to experience themselves better and experience life more. So
well, none of us are getting out of this alive, right? So we enjoy while we're here.
Absolutely.
I know, right? You guys are the best. So
well,
thank you.
We appreciate it.
Your warmth.
Thank you.
So thank you once again, and Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, it's been Brothers of the Arcana. I am Alex Aldia.
I am Dave Rigno.
And with us, Rebecca Torosian. Thank you so much. Until next time, see ya.
God bless.
That's a wrap on today's sacred dive into embodied intimacy. Healing trauma through touch and reclaiming vulnerability as power. A massive thank you to Sister Rebecca Torosian of Saving Intimacy for guiding us so courageously through the body's truths. From surrogate partner work to the nervous system dance that no AI can fake. If this stirred something deep, maybe a green flag you missed, a kink to embrace without shame or forgiveness you've been withholding, like this episode, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with someone who needs real connection over simulation. This conversation was powered by Vulnerability. Because unpacking shame, ego, porn, and AI girlfriends goes down smoother with a calming brew. Until next time, stay present in your body, choose attunement over armor, and remember, the deepest intimacy isn't performed. It's felt, forgiven, and fiercely alive. We'll meet you in the next mystery.